In a small, forgotten town lies a desolate and cursed place, Blackwood Farm. It has stood vacant for decades, decaying quietly under the weight of the dark secrets it holds. Locals say it's haunted, though few know the terrifying events that led to the farm's ruin. It was once home to a prosperous family, but whispers tell of a sinister presence that claimed the lives of every soul who dared to call it home. Story. Our protagonist, Daniel, is a curious young man obsessed with the paranormal. After learning of Blackwood Farm through an online forum, he can't resist investigating, ignoring the warnings from the few locals who will even speak about the place. Daniel sets out on a stormy night to spend a few hours at the abandoned farmhouse, recording his experience for his audience. He arrives at the farm to find it eerily untouched. Old furniture, photos on the wall, and the lingering smell of something decayed. As he sets up his equipment, strange occurrences begin. A chill in the air, unexplained whispers, and faint footsteps on the floorboards above. He ventures upstairs, flashlight flickering, finding an old nursery covered in dust, but filled with toys and a broken rocking chair, which creaks as if someone had just left it. He records everything, convinced he's caught the evidence he came for, until he notices something terrifying. Through the camera's viewfinder, he spots a figure standing in the doorway behind him. A woman, dressed in tattered clothing with dark, empty eyes, stares at him. But when he turns, the room is empty. His pulse quickens, and a feeling of dread washes over him as he realizes he may not be alone at Blackwood Farm. Daniel tries to leave, but the front door won't budge. Trapped, he becomes the target of increasingly violent phenomena. A sharp shove in the back, scratches on his arm, and chilling whispers calling his name. As he races from room to room, seeking an exit, he stumbles upon a journal hidden under a floorboard. Inside are frantic entries from the last residents, detailing their slow descent into madness, haunted by the same specter now tormenting Daniel. The final entry is a warning to never set foot in Blackwood Farm again, claiming the spirit is that of a tortured soul, seeking to replace herself with the living. As he reads, a relentless pounding sound echoes through the walls. The lights flicker, and in the dim light, he sees her again, standing closer now, whispering his name. In a desperate attempt, Daniel barricades himself in a room, clutching the journal and repeating a prayer. But as the spirit closes in, he realizes that escape may be impossible. The entity taunts him, revealing how she, too, had once been alive and was trapped in a cycle of torment. In the final minutes of his recording, the screen captures Daniel's horrifying realization. He may never leave Blackwood Farm. Night falls heavier, a deeper descent into horror. As Daniel huddles in the small, dimly lit room, he tries to focus on his breathing, desperately attempting to block out the oppressive silence filling the space around him. But Blackwood Farm seems to have a life of its own. The walls groan, and the air grows thick with a damp, earthy smell that makes him feel as if he's buried underground. Every shadow in the room seems to shift and watch him, but he knows he has to keep recording. If he doesn't document everything, no one will ever believe what's happening to him. He flips through the journal's pages, searching for answers. There, in hastily scrawled handwriting, he reads about the Lady of Blackwood. According to the entries, she was once a young woman named Eliza who was believed to have gone mad in her isolation on the farm. Her husband left her in the old farmhouse locked away after claiming she was possessed. Eliza's spirit, tormented by years of loneliness and abandonment, is said to roam Blackwood Farm, yearning to reclaim anyone who dares enter her domain. As Daniel reads on, he learns that her spirit supposedly latches onto those who visit the house, drawing them into her realm, where time ceases to exist. The journal claims that every person who has ever vanished here has joined her, a ghostly gathering of lost souls under her control. A sinister presence, unveiled. Daniel hears it then, a soft hum, like an old lullaby, drifting through the walls. His heart races as he recalls the nursery upstairs. Despite his fear, he feels a strange pull to return to that room. Almost in a trance, he follows the haunting melody up the creaking staircase. The nursery is as he left it, though the rocking chair now sways gently, as if an invisible hand were moving it. He hears a whisper in his ear, a faint voice filled with sorrow. "Stay with me." Paralyzed with fear, Daniel turns slowly and finds himself face to face with Eliza's ghostly figure. Her eyes are hollow, dark pits, and her mouth twists into a haunting smile. She reaches out a translucent hand toward him, and, to his horror, he feels an icy grip on his wrist. "You came to see me," she whispers, her voice filled with a mix of joy and malice, "and you'll never leave." Desperate escape and revelation. Breaking free from her grip, Daniel stumbles backward, knocking over a small side table and shattering the silence with the sound of broken glass. He bolts down the stairs, his pulse pounding in his ears, the darkness closing in around him. Every room seems to stretch endlessly, and the walls seem to shift, trapping him deeper within the house's twisted corridors. Finally, he reaches the front door, but as he fumbles with the lock, he hears the laughter of children, a chilling, spectral echo. He turns, and for a split second, he sees them. Small ghostly figures standing in the shadows, their hollow eyes fixed on him with an unsettling gaze. They were the children from the journal, the ones Eliza lured to their doom decades ago. In a final act of desperation, Daniel throws his weight against the door, which suddenly bursts open, releasing him into the cold night. He stumbles out, his vision blurred, but as he looks back, he realizes something chilling. The farmhouse stands completely silent, its windows dark and empty, as if he'd imagined the entire nightmarish encounter. There's no sign of the light he'd left on, or even his recording equipment. Daniel reaches his car and speeds away, but he can't shake the feeling that something isn't right. Exhausted and haunted by the night's events, he returns home, thinking he has narrowly escaped the clutches of Blackwood Farm. However, when he reviews his footage later, his blood runs cold. The recordings show nothing but static, broken occasionally by fleeting glimpses of Eliza's face, her dark eyes staring directly at the camera. The last clip freezes on an image of him, sitting in the nursery, looking blank and lifeless, as if he's been there all along. In the following days, strange occurrences plague him at home. Shadows move in his peripheral vision, and at night, he hears the faint hum of that same lullaby echoing through his rooms. It's then he realizes the terrifying truth. He hasn't truly escaped Blackwood Farm. Eliza's spirit has followed him, bound to him by the very obsession that led him there. The haunting will never end, for he is now part of her story. Weeks later, a news report surfaces about a missing man, last seen on his way to investigate an abandoned farm. His friends remember him as a dedicated paranormal enthusiast, but no trace of him is found. Blackwood Farm remains empty, its dark secrets waiting, as always, for the next unfortunate soul drawn by the allure of the unknown. A tormented existence. Days turn to weeks, but Daniel's nightmare is far from over. After that fateful night at Blackwood Farm, he has become a shell of his former self, haunted by shadows that seem to grow darker with every passing moment. Sleep eludes him, his nights filled with echoes of Eliza's lullaby and the ghostly whispers of the children he saw in the nursery. Even in his waking hours, he sees Eliza's face in mirrors and windows, her empty, hollow eyes following him wherever he goes. Unable to bear the constant terror, Daniel becomes obsessed with finding a way to break the curse. He scours every book on hauntings and curses he can find, desperate for a way to sever the bond he unwittingly forged with Eliza. Yet every clue leads back to the same harrowing truth. Eliza's spirit has latched onto him, and breaking free may require more than any earthly solution. Seeking answers from the past. In his desperation, Daniel tracks down a local historian who is familiar with Blackwood Farm's dark past. The man is hesitant to talk, but after seeing Daniel's haunted, pleading eyes, he agrees to tell him the story he's avoided speaking of for decades. According to the historian, Blackwood Farm was built in the 1800s by the Blackwood family, once a prominent name in the area. But tragedy struck when the family's youngest daughter, Eliza, was rumored to have gone mad. Townsfolk whispered that she practiced strange rituals, often seen wandering the woods at night, talking to the shadows. After her father locked her away in the farmhouse, no one saw her again. Some say she took her own life, while others claim she was cursed. Her spirit left to roam, seeking companionship in her eternal solitude. The historian warns Daniel that those who encounter her spirit rarely find peace afterward. The bond she forms with the living is unbreakable, he says. She doesn't just want company, she wants a life to replace the one she lost. To escape her, you must return something of yours that she's taken. With this new revelation, Daniel recalls his abandoned camera, still lying somewhere in Blackwood Farm. The camera contained every moment of his horrific encounter with Eliza, a piece of himself left behind in that cursed place. In a terrifying realization, he understands that he must go back to retrieve it if he ever hopes to sever the connection. Gathering his courage, Daniel prepares himself for a second trip to Blackwood Farm. This time, he brings a small bag of supplies, salt, candles, and a journal with protective symbols he found during his research. He knows he's walking into the heart of darkness, but he feels he has no choice. Either he confronts Eliza and reclaims his life, or he succumbs to her endless torment. Return to Blackwood Farm. As Daniel arrives at Blackwood Farm, under the cover of night, the farmhouse appears even more sinister than before, its shadowy structure looming against the darkened sky. The air is thick and cold, an unnatural chill that gnaws at his bones. Summoning every ounce of courage, he steps through the broken doorway and into the darkness, calling out to Eliza, hoping to reason with her spirit. But the farmhouse is silent, as if it's holding its breath, waiting for him to make the first move. As he ventures deeper, he follows his memory of that night, finally reaching the nursery where he had last seen the camera. The room is as he left it, dusty, desolate, and shrouded in a suffocating darkness. His camera lies on the floor, untouched, as if waiting for him. As Daniel reaches down to grab his camera, the room fills with a suffocating silence. Then, out of the shadows, Eliza appears, her form more twisted and ghastly than before. Her eyes lock onto his, and he feels her rage, her sorrow, her desperate longing for release. She speaks in a voice that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You think you can leave me?" she whispers, her voice a chilling blend of anguish and anger. "You came here, you sought me out, and now you are mine." Desperate, Daniel pleads with her, telling her he didn't understand the curse, that he didn't mean to invade her world, but she merely laughs, a sound that chills his blood. She begins to advance, her figure flickering like a candle in the wind, each step bringing with it an unbearable coldness. Breaking the bond. Remembering the historian's words, Daniel frantically grabs the bag of salt and circles himself, chanting the protective incantations he learned. The air crackles, and for a brief moment, Eliza hesitates. She screams, a piercing sound that reverberates through the walls, shaking the very foundation of the house. With a desperate prayer, Daniel hurls his camera out of the salt circle, offering it back to her as a piece of the night he spent in her domain. The camera lands at her feet, and for a moment, her twisted face softens. She reaches down, picking it up, holding it as if it were something precious. The room grows silent, and Eliza's figure begins to dissolve, her dark, sorrowful eyes never leaving his. "Thank you," she whispers, her voice fading, and in that instant, Daniel feels the oppressive weight that's haunted him lift. A glimpse of freedom. Daniel leaves Blackwood Farm for the final time, never looking back. As he drives away, the farmhouse grows smaller in his rearview mirror, finally swallowed by the darkness. Though he knows he's left the curse behind, the memories of that night remain etched in his mind, a haunting reminder of the horror he barely escaped. Back home, he finds his recordings are gone, as if the camera's footage vanished along with Eliza's spirit. Yet he feels a strange sense of peace, a freedom he hadn't known in months. But late at night, sometimes when he's alone, he still hears the faintest whisper of that lullaby drifting through the air, reminding him that the spirits of Blackwood Farm are never truly at rest. A fragile peace. After his final visit to Blackwood Farm, Daniel's life begins to return to normal, at least on the surface. The suffocating weight that had hung over him seems lifted. His nightmares become less frequent. The whispers fade, and he can finally sleep through the night without seeing Eliza's dark, hollow eyes in his dreams. But as the days pass, strange occurrences still linger. Small things, subtle but unsettling. Lights flicker when he walks by. Mirrors reflect shadows that don't belong. And every so often he hears faint footsteps echoing in empty rooms. Daniel dismisses them, convincing himself that it's just residual fear, a natural reaction to the trauma he's endured. Yet a sense of dread gnaws at him, whispering that his connection to Blackwood Farm may not be as severed as he hoped. A return of the hauntings. One evening, as Daniel settles into bed, he hears a soft, familiar sound drifting through his home. The unmistakable lullaby from Blackwood Farm. His blood runs cold. He sits up, straining to listen, hoping it's just his mind playing tricks on him. But the sound grows louder, filling his bedroom with the same chilling melody he heard that night in the nursery. Terrified, he turns on every light in the house, hoping to dispel the darkness. But no matter where he goes, growing louder and more insistent. Desperate, he clutches the journal he brought back from Blackwood Farm, flipping through its pages in search of answers he might have overlooked. One entry catches his eye, one he hadn't noticed before. Scrawled in messy handwriting, it reads, "She may let you go, but her spirit never leaves. She binds herself to those who seek her, forever entwined with their soul." The realization crashes over him. Eliza's spirit isn't bound to Blackwood Farm. She's bound to him. Uncovering the true nature of the curse. Determined to break free once and for all, Daniel seeks out anyone who might know more about spirits that attach themselves to the living. He meets with a paranormal investigator, an elderly woman named Margaret, who specializes in severing bonds with malevolent entities. She listens as he recounts his story, her face growing more serious with each detail. Spirits like Eliza are not merely ghosts, Margaret explains. They are trapped souls, desperate for connection. When she let you leave the farm, she allowed part of herself to stay with you. If she can't keep you physically, she'll linger in your mind, your memories, until you either join her willingly or go mad from her influence. Margaret gives Daniel a final option. He must return to Blackwood Farm one last time and face Eliza on her terms, confronting the spirit without fear. The only way to break her hold on you is to make peace with her. But understand, it's dangerous. If she senses any weakness, she may pull you fully into her world. The final journey. Haunted and exhausted, Daniel knows he has no choice. The restless whispers, the haunting lullaby, the shadows that cling to his every move. He can't live like this. Armed with a new resolve, he makes his way back to Blackwood Farm under a pale, eerie moon. The farmhouse stands silent, its windows like hollow eyes watching him approach. He steps inside, his flashlight casting long shadows against the walls. As he moves deeper into the house, the air grows heavy, pressing down on him like a weight. He knows she's waiting. Daniel speaks aloud, his voice trembling but determined. Eliza, I know you're here. I don't belong to you. I came for answers, but now I want freedom. I need you to let me go. For a moment, there's only silence. Then, slowly, a figure emerges from the shadows. It's Eliza, but as she drifts off form, even more distorted and sorrowful than before. In her face is a mix of longing and rage, as if she's torn between letting him go some small and holding on forever, hidden, waiting. She moves for another chance, her dark eyes fixed on his. As she closes her eyes, he feels the pull of her sadness. She notices a faint whisper, her loneliness reaching out like icy tendrils, like a distant memory around his heart. I'll be watching. Why did you come? She whispers, her voice echoing with pain. Why did you seek me, only to abandon me? A heartfelt plea. Daniel feels a surge of compassion, despite his fear. He realizes that Eliza has been trapped in an endless cycle of loneliness, rejected and forgotten. He speaks to her gently, telling her that her suffering is over, that she doesn't have to cling to the living anymore. You can find peace, Eliza, he says. You don't have to be alone. It's time to let go. A tear slips down her face, and her expression softens. In that moment, she looks almost human, a broken soul yearning for release. She reaches out one final time, but this time, her touch is gentle, a fleeting brush of cold air against his skin. I just wanted someone to stay, she whispers, but perhaps you're right. Her figure begins to fade, her dark eyes lingering on him for a moment longer. As she dissolves into the shadows, a sense of calm fills the room, and the oppressive weight lifts. The silence that follows is peaceful, a quiet so profound that Daniel can feel it in his bones. The end of the curse. Leaving Blackwood Farm, Daniel feels a strange lightness, as though a heavy chain has been lifted from his spirit. The house behind him is just that, a crumbling, abandoned farmhouse with no trace of its ghostly past. He knows in his heart that Eliza has finally found peace, and with her release, the haunting presence fades from his life. In the following weeks, the nightmares disappear, the whispers cease, and the shadows that once followed him fade away. He feels a newfound appreciation for his life, a sense of freedom he hadn't felt in months, a haunted legacy. Though Daniel is finally free, he never forgets his encounter with Eliza or the dark secrets of Blackwood Farm. He becomes an advocate for haunted places, warning others to approach such sites with caution and respect. The farmhouse, now empty, falls deeper into ruin. slowly reclaimed by nature. And while Daniel has moved on, he occasionally visits the farmhouse, leaving a small candle in the doorway, a silent offering to the spirit of Eliza, a reminder that even the loneliest souls deserve peace. Conclusion. Daniel's journey reminds us that not all hauntings are malicious. Some spirits are bound by sorrow, searching for connection in the darkness. In facing his fears and showing compassion, Daniel found a way to free himself and help Eliza find her final rest. But Blackwood Farm remains, a quiet place of mystery, a solemn testament to the enduring bond between the living and the dead.